was your weekend?
It was a really good weekend. My sister-in-law and her two daughters came and stayed with us. So being in our new house, this was the first time we've had weekend guests. So it was really fun to be able to have people in a full house and do fun things with them.
Yay.
Yeah.
That's always fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was able to, I was at MJ Cott's son's wedding for
Ooh.
Alex and Will. My band played that, and so it was pretty fun. Some old faces came through, so some similar faces. Paul Dean officiated the wedding, and I saw Paul Gaucher there and Olstead, so it was really fun. And then, of course, my band played the reception.
Wow.
And so that was a lot of fun, and it was just fun to see MJ cutting loose and a bunch of Prince of Peace people around. So that was a really good time, and yeah, it was all good. It's a good weekend all around. But anyway, welcome to the podcast, everybody. I'm Darren, for anybody who is wondering, and over here we have the wonderful Pastor Jill. And you didn't preach this weekend.
No.
But we have you, which is going to be great because we're going to talk about at different times maybe we've been, wrestling with God, or can you explain a little bit what we heard this week?
Sure. Pastor Sarah did a wonderful job. I was really happy to listen to her. She was talking about the spirit of rebellion.
Rebelling with God. That's yes.
Yes, and I think that's a really hard topic to talk about and not super fun to listen to. It makes us do introspection that might be uncomfortable, but it's the truth and very important in any walk with the Lord to understand that about ourselves. So I appreciated that she brought that forward.
Yeah, it's interesting because I grew up way up north. I grew up Catholic. And there was no, you don't rebel.
Not allowed.
Not in that world. But it is interesting because I do find, for me, I don't know if it's rebel or if it can even, to me, question almost. And I think, but that's why you have faith, at the end of the day is it wouldn't be called faith if you didn't have questions.
Right, and I don't think those are the same thing. I think questioning is different from rebellion.
Okay,
Yeah,
I like it. Okay.
I see questioning as you're open-minded, you're looking for answers, you're maybe even frustrated you're not getting the answers, but rebellion is choosing a different path.
It's choosing a different path.
Yes, so you might have questions when you're rebellious too. In fact, you probably do. But instead of being open to hearing from God, you're choosing then to do a different thing, follow your own path. And I think that's what the Bible stories were about. They were, especially that one from Numbers, it was about people that were getting really impatient with the discomfort of being in the wilderness. And God had given them a plan. It was pretty clear. The leadership was pretty clear, but they were impatient about getting someplace more comfortable. So instead of being open-minded about what God was doing, they were making their own plans. Yeah.
Okay, I see. I
can see why a Reformed Catholic might get those confused.
Well, questions were rebelling.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
But I like getting that distinction right out of the way, because I do think there is probably even a lot in the congregation that might even had that thought,
Right.
like even questioning my faith is an act of rebellion. And
True.
And actually it's a natural part of faith.
Absolutely. Yes, I'm glad you bring that up, because I do think there are a lot of people that are afraid to question God because they think that's showing they don't have faith and that there must be something wrong with them if they don't understand it. But actually, it would be the height of hubris to say we understood everything God did. So
yeah. One of the things that I always like I've always struggled with as a phrase, and it's, when something bad happens to me, someone's like, it's all part of God's plan.
Oh, that's so bad.
It's
so hurtful.
It's so hard to wrestle with that,
Yeah.
and I think it can lead to not just questions, but then maybe to some rebellion in my own life. Well, let's get into it. Let's see what you brought for us today.
Well, the first big point that I thought she really brought home was this idea that distrust in God is a spiritual offense. And that hit me deeply because I haven't thought of it that way before. I mean, we're talking about faith and trust. They're kind of interchangeable words. And if you knew all the answers, it wouldn't be faith. You wouldn't have to trust because you would just know the answers. But the fact that people were choosing in this Bible story not to trust God, that wasn't just because they had a lot of questions. It was because spiritually they were making choices outside of God's will. So I hadn't thought of it as being a spiritual offense that you are maybe, it's hard to say choosing not to trust, but you weren't open-minded to trusting. And because of that, this whole group of people went down a very negative pathway. I believe they got swallowed up in the earth. I mean, it was very dramatic. Sarah didn't spend a long time talking about that, but it wasn't what God had wanted for them. But it wasn't because of any other circumstances, really. It was just what was going on in their hearts that was causing this disruption between them and God. So that kind of threw me as I was pondering that. But then also she talked about when your heart is in a spirit of rebellion, you're not seeing clearly either. And she brought up the point that these people that had a spirit of rebellion were looking backwards towards Egypt, the place where they had been enslaved, and all they could see were the good things. And she said that Egypt looked like a land of blessing when these people were reflecting on it from a place of rebellion. And I thought how true that is, that when our hearts are colored in some way that's away from God, things don't appear the way they truthfully are.
Or were,
right.
I mean, and that reflects in so many different ways. I mean, as we grow up, we go through heartbreak, we go through breakups, and I can't tell you how many times, like, you look, you remember why the breakup happened, but all you remember are all the things that were so good. And those are the moments that replay in your head. And then all of a sudden you forget about the other things, things that weren't very healthy or weren't very good for you in that situation.
Yes. It could be, relationship. It could be moving. Like I said, I've recently moved, and it's really hard to be unfamiliar about everything. And I still don't understand the light switches in my house. There's like all these switches, and I don't remember what they go towards. And then to get to different restaurants or stores or gas stations even, I always have to put in the directions in my phone, and it's so frustrating. And once in a while, I catch myself thinking, why did I have to move? Why couldn't I just stayed in one spot? And I look back with those rose-colored glasses. But thankfully, I am truthful with myself, and that would have been so much worse to be commuting that far, because it's about 38 miles from here, so that would have made so many other things worse.
I mean, I'm in the same process right now of picking up my life and moving it, and it is, I'm aware of this this thing of now just remember you're gonna graduation goggles kind of moment. You start to walk through the halls, or you walk through the things that you always do, and you see everything with just this glint of love because it's something you're leaving behind.
Yes.
And you've also got to I've been really forcing myself to take in, the good things and endure those and print those on your heart, the smiles, the hugs, all those things. But also remember the 60-minute drives. Remember all the sacrifice. Remember all these other things that are a part of it, so that when you do get down there, you have the things that you loved. But remember, it wasn't without all the challenges that led you to the path you're on. I think it's the grass is always greener effect.
Right.
You're looking on the other side. Oh, grass is greener over there, and you get over there, and it's pretty green over here. But then you look on the other side of the fence, but it's pretty great over there, So I can definitely see how that would have affected a lot of them, especially when talking about Egypt.
Right.
Back in the day. Plus, for a lot of those coming out of slavery, that's all they knew from when they were babies. So everything they're walking into is brand new, and freedom is great. We look at freedom easily in our world because, well, for the most part, a lot of us have been very, very lucky to have freedom.
Right.
So when we look at what they had, it'd be like, well, that's obvious. That's an obvious thing. That would be bad. Slavery, like your life wasn't fulfilled. But if it's all you know, everything else in front of you is scary. You have to learn all these new techniques, all these new things to provide for yourself where you weren't doing things like that before, maybe.
Right, exactly. And even though it was terrible, their housing was there. They had some type of food. It wasn't enough, but they could count on it, and they didn't have the responsibility for going out and finding that for themselves. So, yes, it's shocking to us to think, who would ever want to go back to a situation that was that bad? Clearly, they were not in charge of their lives. Somebody else was telling them what to do. But if we take that metaphor, so many of us actually do live our lives that way. We link ourselves to things that might be unhealthy, and the second that we start to pull away, we get scared and we bounce back because that was familiar. So it could be a relationship, it could be a habit, whatever it might be. That's where we feel comfortable and familiar.
It reminds me of my grandfather smoked cigarettes for years. And he would try and he would try and he would try to quit, and he would quit and then he'd go back, and then he'd quit and then he'd go back. And it's one of those things, there was, the different chemicals in it, but it was also like how he got out of the house to get a breath of fresh air away from everything. It wasn't necessarily the addictive additives to like what nicotine can give you, but that moment also of just breathing.
Yes.
And I think it wasn't until he just started to go outside, to get, take a quote unquote smoke break, to get outside, to get that he kicked the habit.
Yeah. That's a really good point. I mean, I remember when my dad quit smoking, he had to have a substitute. It became Lifesavers. He had to have something that he could touch and he could put in his mouth and keep busy with, that is whatever that act was of soothing yourself, of being...
Peanuts. We had peanuts. My grandfather sailed, and he had peanuts in the boat, and that was like, you would always see him reaching. He'd be like, "Darren, go get the jar," because it was a jar of peanuts back then, and we'd eat peanuts in the boat. It was that kind of thing. So we've got this group of people, and they got swallowed up by the earth. Let's continue on that path.
that was, like I said, she didn't spend a long time talking about that, but that was the punishment. And I think because God told them, or they went to God and they're like, we want to do it our way, and Moses asked God to be the judge, and that was the judgment. They just fell into a hole and got swallowed up in the earth, which is very tragic and dramatic. And I think, though, it again illustrates where we are headed if we are going anywhere besides towards God. And if we think that we have the smarts to do it ourselves, and the strength and all the wisdom and the connections, we are really just digging ourselves a hole, because doing it without God is not leading us towards life. So I think about one of my hobbies is I like to teach exercise classes, and I really like these choreographed classes that I'm a part of. You get trained and then you do it. And when they're training you how to do it, the trainers are like, don't mess with this. All of these exercise scientists, they've got degrees in this. They've been working on this for a whole year, likely, before you even saw it. your idea is not better than theirs. So you have to remember that. Even though I might not understand all of the thought that went into it, everything will be better if I just follow this plan. And so I think it's that way with God too, that we don't always understand everything, why we're sent different places or encounter different people or obstacles. But trying to figure it out on our own isn't going to get us anywhere better.
Yeah. So, rebelling against God.
Mm-hmm.
So let's dive a little bit further into that, because I think at the front of this you said in some ways, Sarah mentioned that it was in some ways good to rebel against God. Did I, or a healthy question? I guess I missed that.
I don't think the rebellion isn't the good part, but asking questions is a good part. And I think being open to saying, God, I don't understand this and I don't like it and I want to know more from you, that's really healthy and really good. And God welcomes that. And God doesn't always clue us in, but it's still keeping the communication open. There's a dialogue. But the idea that we're closing ourselves off from God and choosing our own path, that's where the rebellion comes in, and that's where an obstacle goes up. And I think about in ourselves, we all have this little seed of rebellion. And I believe that goes all the way back to the garden where Adam and Eve are sitting there and there's all this beautiful fruit and there's just one thing they're not supposed to do. Just don't go to that tree. Don't touch the fruit on that tree. And they know that. But there's just so many choices, and it's wonderful until this question pops up. Why not? And, you know, Adam and Eve could have brought that to God. They could have said, God, we don't understand. Maybe can you talk to us a little bit more, help us understand? But they didn't. They made their own free choice to do something God had expressly forbidden. And that was a little seed of rebellion then was planted right there. It wasn't a curious thing. Sarah had mentioned when she was arguing with her sister, they weren't necessarily curious about each other and respecting each other. They were trying to get their own way. And I think way in the garden, that little seed is planted in each one of us that says, well, if I don't quite understand it, then I get to make my own choices and do my own thing. And so I think throughout life, it's not always fruit that causes us to fall off the wagon or whatever it might be. It's probably something else, like we're scared. We feel abandoned, or we think nobody understands us, or God has forgotten about us. I think these are the little cracks where that voice comes in and says, why don't you just try something your own way for once? You're not feeling good now. How could it be worse? Maybe you can numb yourself for a little while and forget about all your questions and your pain. And when we make that choice, then that's where we start to put up a barrier between ourselves and God. And that's where our eyesight gets really bad and we can only see now what we want to see. And we're forgetting the truth that maybe we used to know. I've heard this spoken about in relationships where there might be infidelity, and one spouse, when they're making that choice to break their marriage vows, they begin right at that moment telling themselves lies about their partner. Right at that moment, they're starting to say all the negative things about that partner that justifies their poor choices. And they're starting to put up a barrier. Even before they take any action at all, they're starting to put up a barrier and ignoring the truth, and their eyesight is going a different direction. And it's just so easy to do. It's so easy. And if it's easy to do that with a flesh and blood person right in front of us, it's easy to do that with God too. And say, oh, well, my grandma died, so God never loved me anyway. Something like that. And God doesn't come through. And that only leads us, though, to that pit that will swallow us up. It doesn't make life better. And most people who have gone through horrible situations where they followed their own path for a while, they're not usually happier at the end of it. Even sometimes on the outside, it looks like they have more stuff, but they're not usually happier.
Yeah. Well, and I like to think about it like, and there's a fine line sometimes too. I think with life and like if I was to put a red button on this table and say, don't press that button.
That's all you want.
I mean, it's almost everybody, but why? I'm not going to tell you why, but I'm just telling you it's not a good thing to press. Don't press that button. And we are built on endorphin rushes. You do a lot of exercise and things like that, and I believe in a lot of ways endorphins are great for that, because you go in and you get that endorphin rush when you're working, you feel good and all those things. But we also get endorphin rushes when sometimes I think we go and press that red button.
Yes.
And that is not always a good thing to do that. So I always there's also a healthy amount of curiosity in human nature. I also don't think that's a bad thing either.
No.
So it's for me, it's always kind of one of those things. There are many times where it's very easy to see. Like I personally think it's very easy to see in the example you gave of infidelity. Obviously, never press that red button.
Right.
But there are other things where shades of gray hit. Where you're like, is this a moment where I can be curious and go, and maybe that button was orange, it wasn't red, and trying to figure that out, because not everything for us is always so black and white.
True.
And so my question would be is, where does it become gray, and where does it become, okay, we are going and we are definitely like rebelling against God in this situation?
Right. That's a really deep question, and I think that it's probably different for every circumstance because it's based on what's in the person's heart. So I love science, for example. I love that people are researching, and I personally believe science is the pursuit of learning more about God's glory. It just the more that's discovered, the more I see that we just have a wonderful creator. And I believe God gave us curious minds and intellect and that drive to learn more. I think that's all a blessing, and God wants to share this stuff with us. The question is why? And so if you see an orange button and you're like, oh, is this across the line? That's where let's take it to God and say, God, if you want me to do this, I need a sign from you. And that sign might be inner peace. It might be that God sends a wise person that you already know you can trust, and that person is going to give you some wisdom. It could come in just a variety of ways, but being open to being directed, I think, is the key. So if we see that orange button and we're like, well, I think I can sneak this one past God. That's a whole different thing than saying, God, do you want me to do this? I will do this for you if you want me to do this. So I think that God will bless us and bless our curiosity, especially when it's given in the right spirit. But if it's given in the spirit of, I don't really want to check with God on this one, I think that's a mirror then that little seed of rebellion is growing.
I have kind of an example of this,
of
there, and it's very recent, and it's very public knowledge that I'm moving on from Prince of Peace. So this is not breaking news, and I love this place, and it's a path. It was a calling. I mean, it was right there in front of me. I remember when this job posting came up for media arts director, and I'm driving down the road, and I'm very unhappy with my current situation with my job, and this post shows up, and I never pull over to like respond to a Facebook post that pops up in my feed, but I respond to it, and then almost 6 months later, I got the job and felt the calling, and I felt God's voice in that moment because it is something I just didn't know. I've never worked at a church before. I was struggling with my faith at the moment. And my main struggles were the fact that I grew up Catholic, and I have a lot of friends and family who are part of the LGBTQIA plus community. And I just could not wrestle with the fact that they weren't welcome. Like, I just couldn't, I didn't know how to deal with that. Ironically, the job that I accepted changed that whole narrative for me.
So you're talking about when you first started working at Prince of Peace?
Yes.
Okay, so we're not confusing that with the new place you're going.
I'm getting to it.
Okay.
So, so I come here and deep love, feel my calling. We're 8 years into it now. We've celebrated 8 years just this last week. And I've got this other calling coming to me. And I'm really wrestling with, am I making the right choice? And what am I doing? And so I chose to press the orange button. And so I chose to post the orange button. People know what's going to happen, accepted the job, let everybody know here. One day I'm going out to have dinner with my buddy Brian. He's the piano player that plays here at Prince of Peace. And we're going to go see my buddy Trevor play at a bar nearby at 7th Street Entry. And we go and we just start walking, and we were going to go have dinner. And then we just found this random place, Kieran's, downtown.
Been there.
It's a great patio, which is where we ended up. And we got seated, and I got sat in the specific place that I was that I didn't choose. Waitress chose it. And then Brian sat first, I sat second. And I'm sitting down in the chair, and I look up, and there's this building across the street where this window is. And in that window, roughly 18 years ago is when I first started my job in production and working in here. And I was homeless. And I had $30 in my pocket, a bunch of old tools, and a guitar rig in my truck. And there's a theater up there where I first started working started my professional career in performing and production. And at night, I used to sit up, and this is it's on the 8th floor. I used to look down from that window onto that patio.
Oh.
And I had just this whole thing wash over me, like full circle. Everything Brian was saying just started to get drowned out.
Poor Brian.
It was this full moment of just okay, I hear you. Mm-hmm. Hard to ignore that one, because it was all happenstance that we ended up right there several weeks prior after making a huge decision. And God puts me at a table, one of the few tables where you can see that window from, and just basically was okay, I hear you. I'm making, full circle, I'm making the right choice. I didn't press a red button, I pressed a green button. And really helping me with that decision. But leading up to that, I was oh man, is this the right decision? Mm-hmm. And so I think when you're in those moments and you're looking for it, or maybe not even looking for it, because I wasn't necessarily looking for full circle anything, or if I was looking for if this is the right path, which I had that question, trust me, anytime you move, I'm sure you just went through this whole thing. You're just especially a place that you love, and a place that really gave you wings to be who you are. That's hard. It's not and so to sit down and get that moment and get it in a way I did not expect on a night I did not expect it, was just okay.
What a blessing.
Yeah, it was. I took a picture of it. I even posted this online when I let most of the people that I wanted to know through some of the socials. But so I kind of look at this, you can find those moments where it might feel like you're rebelling. This is why this all this is where this sermon really kind of hit me in a spot, because I was uh-oh. Am I rebelling against my original calling? Because I know I felt called here. But I got kind of that curious hit, and that confirmation, I believe, that God was no, You're on the right path, brother.
Well, I believe that too, and that's true. I mean, I think when we're in a process of discernment, it doesn't always feel very comfortable or reassuring, and especially if you know you're making a choice to something that might be less comfortable even. I mean, you're moving, you don't, maybe you know people at the place you're going, maybe you don't. But I think that is just the following all the people in the Bible that picked up and did God's calling. They usually were sent someplace unfamiliar, and they didn't know the inhabitants of the land when they got there, and they didn't even really know what they were supposed to do, but God said go, and so they went, and they just started walking. And when we're discerning, I believe if we're discerning with an open heart, here's the thing, you could even make the wrong choice, and it will be a blessing. Because with an open heart, you're giving God the opportunity to do something miraculous. And that's what God's looking for. God just wants to come in and shine through in your life. And maybe the choices we're making, we're not getting all of the backup that we want. We're not getting the reassurance that we want. And we're kind of stepping out one little step at a time. But if we just keep giving it to God and saying, God, I'm doing this. I'm trying my best. I'm trying to do this for you. Bless this, make something good happen. God will not disappoint. And so I think God absolutely confirmed your decision and is getting geared up to bless what's going to happen in the future. At the same time, I believe God hasn't forgotten Prince of Peace, and God is going to bless Prince of Peace and bring some talent here that is new and needed for this current moment. So
and there's so much talent already here, you know, with whoever's here. But I like to think, I think the main question, as I'm, because I would say we are externally processing this particular Bible passage.
Yes.
But which is good, because like this is why you get in small groups, by the way. If you're not in a small group or a Bible study, this is why you do it. This is so you can have good conversations and ask these questions. But I do believe there's one way to walk into it, and you either ask the question, am I rebelling? And you ask it in a way as like, I don't want to rebel.
Right.
Is this what I'm doing? Or I'm doing this in spite of you. That, to me, is open rebellion against God.
For sure.
I'm doing this in spite of God.
And we have to be careful, though, because I do believe there are negative forces in this world, and sometimes they dress up like God. And so that's where we have to be really careful to keep going to God and as much spiritual support as we can get to take it, and that's why God gave us a community so we can talk to other people. You don't have to tell the whole community, but maybe there are 2 or 3 people that you can trust with this decision and ask them to pray about it with you. And maybe do a retreat. I know you love to go on some personal retreats and get into the woods and really wrestle with God just like Jacob did. And there's lots of ways we can approach it and continue to seek that confirmation along the way that we are doing God's will. Because, that tempter, that serpent will tell us we're doing it for God's will. Because God really wants you to be wealthier, or God really wants you to have more fame, or whatever it is that we wish God wanted for us, right? God wants us to be more popular or beautiful or whatever it is. That little voice can easily derail us, even when we think we're trying to seek God. So we just need as much backup as we can get. But God has given us a lot of that. We've got the Bible, we've got people, we've got our church, we got prayer. So in every way possible, just keep asking God, and God will bless that open heart, I believe.
I think prayer and meditation on those things are so important. This is totally going to speak into what you love, but where I did most of it was doing laps in a pool. Oh, yeah, that is so mind-numbing, in my opinion. I love it. I can't run, my knees hurt, all those things, but I grew up in the lake. I was a fish. I have gills, I think. I'm not even sure. But for the last 2 months, I do roughly about 6,000 to 7,000 yards. It's amazing. A week, in 2 or 3 sessions. And it all was, it was easy to do because I had a lot that I was pondering and a lot that I was praying on. And I don't know if anybody's out there who goes out for walks or anything, but you can pray and work out at the same time.
Oh, that's some of the best, because especially if you're working out hard, you don't have a lot of space at least I don't have a lot of space in my brain for complex things, and I get really down to the truth. And yeah, I have swimmers in my family, and so I know those people that can go back and forth in the pool. I try, but I mean,
it's not
it gives you some space, though. There's not a lot of distractions there in that pool.
But you're yoga, right? I
do a lot of things like that. I can do Pilates and some of that Pyo stuff.
And that is, I mean, it's so good to do, because it is amazing how much deeper I think I can go in, whether it's yoga, whether it's going for a walk, or in my situation, swimming. Fishing, for you fishermen out there, is another one where it's just you keep casting. It's this motion. It's this moment where you get to be where it's you. This is your time, and really thinking about it, and you can go really deep.
Yeah. Well, and even like I like to run, and sometimes my prayer just becomes with every footstep, like, Jesus, help me, Jesus. I mean, it can be that simple, but, said over, hundreds of times, it gets to be very powerful. So,
Well, this has been a really good conversation, and we started off where is rebellion, all the way to finding some of those gray areas. And I think the challenge for this week for everybody listening is, not where, your open rebellion, but where are the gray areas? What are you really thinking about this week? And how are you, what are you doing to go through that process of figuring out, is this a rebellion or is this not? And note that I think that question, and you can correct me on this, even that question is a healthy question.
Absolutely. Reflect on yourself, and the second you open that door to God to speak into it, you're on the right path.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, this has been the Trust the Story podcast. For any questions or anything like that, or you want to talk about small groups or anything that we talked about here that is very helpful, very good to have moments. Even now, just talking to Pastor Jill one-on-one is very helpful for me. And you can email those questions at the email right in front of the table, communications@popmn.org. Share this podcast with your friends, subscribe to our podcast, all those wonderful things. Well, Jill, this has been amazing.
Thank you.
All right, y'all have a great day.